And we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second online show this year. I'm together again with my co-host Bjorn, and we got two amazing speakers, Sander and Sam. Say hello, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
So today,
we're programmers, real literally.
The whole evening will be around Scully, so be prepared for some great content. I'll give the word to Bjorn.
Yes, and good evening to you as well. And in case, if you have any questions during the presentations of either Sander or Sam, feel free to use the link down in the description, the Slido link, or go to slido.com #Scully, and you can ask your questions there. And at the end of every presentation, we'll go through a couple of them. So remember that if you have any questions, slido.com #Scully. See you there. Back to you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Bjorn. Sander, I will share your screen now so that you can start. And there it is.
First of all, I don't have any slides. Hello, I'm Sander Elias. I'm the lead architect of Scully. And I'm going to take you from...
And technical
he's gone, yeah.
He already said that he maybe had some issues with this, sharing his screen.
So he said, just sit tight for a few minutes and he'll be back. So in the meanwhile, let's just rephrase. I mean, for people coming in just now, if you have any questions during the presentation, given that there is a presentation, downstairs in the description you'll find the link to follow. So Jeff, just in the meantime, can we tell some?
Back.
Oh,
He's
there we
back.
are. There he is.
There he is. Back again.
All right, great. Welcome back, Sander.
That went well.
Yeah.
Apparently, I have something like a subscription to problems during streaming.
The demo gods.
I will try again.
Yeah, I will open up my stuff again because this time my computer was just completely disconnected from everything. So I did a quick reboot. That means that I have to restart everything I had prepared. It's always nice to do live on air.
It's part of it. Part of the. I mean, it's
part of
the weather outside. Yeah. Computer is not feeling it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have.
So basically, Bjorn, did you already did something with Scully? I did it.
Well, that's a good one. As we wait for a little bit, I actually did. I made a quick little project and followed the tutorial, but that's easily 4 months ago now already. Just to see where they were at that point, and I think they've improved a lot on the docs and of course added additional plugins and all that. But I have a basic idea of what you could use it for, and I was actually considering setting up a little blog with that. Because friends of mine work with Jackal and all that stuff, and it's on that same level a little bit. So I have a little idea, but no idea what's coming tonight. So what about you, Jeffrey?
So I think I rebuilt it with Scully in, I don't know, a couple of days probably, because some tweaks I need to do, and I wanted to have some extra plugins because of some stuff. I looked a bit on Sam's content, on Sam's blog around Scully and the plugins he made. So yeah, but it's running already, so you can even look at it already.
You did even a RSS plugin?
Yeah, but I didn't publish it yet. Yeah,
You should go public with your stuff.
Yes, sorry. Okay, I will do it. I will try to do it somewhere upcoming week or so.
Okay. I just keep on yammering until you do. That's how things get done. Let's see. I've started my server. I've started my other server. I need one more.
So, Sam, have you done anything with Scully?
No, not yet. I'm just making everything up as I go.
Awesome. Well, that's the best way to learn, right? So we get to see Sam's first dive into Scully.
Yeah. It's going to be a good demo as well.
My screen is somewhat returned. I hope I have everything in order. Share screen.
I can see it here. it's coming up.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
Sander, take it away.
Okay, take 2. I prepared a simple Angular application, and I made it not too simple. There are a couple of things in it. There is like a tremendous landing page. I also have a very elaborate about page. I have the authors, and there I'm still missing something. That looks better.
Nice.
Could you pump up the font of your EDA for a little bit again, so that we can see it again?
Is it readable?
Well, I think.
Yeah, one more. Yeah, it should be pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, looks good.
All the code I'm going to show this evening is available on GitHub. I will share the GitHub repo later on, so you can play with it. If you have any questions about the code or how I done something, just open up an issue on the GitHub repo, and I will answer there. I think that's the most easy way to get a hold of me. The about works, and here we have like a small list of posts with some posts and authors. So all in all, it's a small application. We have like a bonus thing that is going to land later on. Now, first of all, how are we going to run Scully on this thing? We can start off with just trying Scully. I have an alias to Scully to my global installed Scully. So this is working for me. Won't be working for most people, but you will see that it already is finding a couple of things. It's telling me that I have a couple of routes that Scully doesn't know how to handle. I will go over those in a little bit. If you remember in the application, I have an authors page, and that has an ID. If I go to a different author, the ID changes. And while your Angular application knows how to get those numbers, your static site generator doesn't know how to get that. So you need to teach how to do that. You will see there are a couple of pages running already. I can look at those. And probably they will not be very well. Well, the landing works. The pages work. And all seems hunky-dory. So getting starting with Scully is really, really easy. You can just install and run without doing anything. Although you're not getting much value out of it because your application now knows nothing about Scully. And there are a load of gaps. If I go to one of the auto pages and I hit reload, it will say, hey, I don't know that static file because it's not there. There is a static file. At the host, and you can see that the most easily.
Sander, could you zoom in on, I guess a couple things. I'm not sure what they're referring to exactly, but the readability seems to be a bit poor in some points.
I'm willing to zoom in, but
I think your ID is fine. Maybe the terminal.
I don't know if I can zoom in the terminal.
Oh, I don't know either about that.
Yeah, I think you can.
Everything becomes larger.
Yeah. I think this is good. Well, I'll see with the person. Thank you so much. Sorry for disturbing there.
No problem. But now I need to zoom zoom out because often left there. Okay. Yes, we can go to the network tab. We can load the page, and right here we can see what Scully does for you. I'm going to separate this one out. What you can see here in the preview is that the application is here already fully rendered. If you look at the response, all the HTML that is needed for this page is here. Now, is the landing works not a really interesting page, but it is interesting to see this. If I go to the Angular page, and I do the same thing there, I do a reload, and then I take a look at the index. You will see there is nothing here. And that is what Scully does for you. It pre-renders so that the Google CEO, not only the Google CEO, but any CEO agent can read your page with all its content. It will see the same thing as usual seeing. And in here you have just an empty app root with nothing there, only the scripts. So that is a big difference. Other thing is you need to teach Scully a little bit how to work with your page. Now, how to install Scully properly, which is just using the schematics. ng add Scully io/init. When I do this, I will get a couple of new files. And the most important change that really needs to be done is in here. The Scully lib module is loaded in the app module, and it is added. And what this does is makes sure that while we're running Puppeteer, we are using Puppeteer in the background. It knows when your Angular application is ready. Oh, that is nice. Oh, that might be.
The demo gods are poking around.
Yeah. I did this afternoon like a gazillion times, and of course, every time it worked. I did came prepared. Git reset.
Praise the Git, eh?
Angular compiler TypeScript requires what? Oh. I'm going to skip a step. There is an issue with Angular 10, and I cannot update to Angular 10 just yet because I have to wait until NX is ready.
Oh, yeah.
So I know what the issue is, and it is a TypeScript issue. TypeScript has released version 3.9. 3.9 uses TSLib, and TSLib version 2 is incompatible with the previous versions of TypeScript. which is a nice fresh dependency hell we get all for free. Basically, this means if I'm going to support both 9 and 10, I don't know what I need to do. A bunch load of extra steps.
Yeah, it looks like version 9.
Yeah, I'm back to version 9, but I'm now skipping a step. I wanted to show the same application in Scully, but without transfer service and then with transfer service. That is going to change a little bit because the step without transfer service doesn't compile anymore for some reason.
Could you, for our viewers, could you elaborate a bit on the transfer state part then? Like,
I think it's easier to show. I will go to the outer component. Outdoors component, because that's a little bit simpler. With this large font, it is difficult to show. When I'm going to load the outers, which is basically this list, I'm going to use HTTP get the outers from my AP. This is all known. The thing is, if you are going to use static hosting, you actually want your data to go with your static files. And in Scully, we can do that by using transfer service. If I now look at the dist files, and did I build? No. Yeah, this is the first generation. I will. That is just so nice. New not defined. So it's now finding a couple of routes, like 150. Scully is not that slow. It takes like just 20 pages a second. And that's on my really slow computer. If I'm now going to look in the dist folder, you will see that I have the outers file. And the outers file is just the HTML with everything in there. But there is also some data in there. Which is not findable with this font size. But it is basically this data. Which is the list of users. And this data is now embedded in your HTML file and available as a separate file. So you can just send this off to your static file hoster and your application doesn't need to talk to the server anymore. It just goes to the thing. Just goes to the static site. I can see that in here if I open the network tab again. I do a reload. I go to the users. You will see there is no call to the API server anymore. While if I'm going to this version, you will see I'm going to the here is a file going to localhost 8200. So I'm talking to the backend server basically. Well, if I'm going in this one. I do a reload. You will see if I filter up on user, it's not there. There is the data that's also not there because I didn't navigate yet. All the data is available in this file. If I look in the response and I scroll down, you will see that somewhere down here, can I format in here? Yeah. You will see that the JSON data is embedded in the HTML file, which saves like our call to the server because it's coming along with the thing, along with the HTML page, which means that the page builds instantaneously. There is no flash of content. Sorry, because all the data is there from the get-go. With all those things working so well, I am completely lost in my order of things. Yeah. One of the things you will see that is all the data is here now in this JSON file. And when you're building a static file, actually this is like 4 or 5K of data, and this will be embedded in every page that uses it. That might not be a very smart thing to do. So you can go to the autos component and clean it up a little bit. And what I'm doing here is I map over my rows and I extract only the data I need. And using the Scully transfer service, which I'm doing here, use Scully transfer server. I give it an ID. This is just a string that identifies this thing. It needs to be unique in this page. This page can have a lot of subpages, or like I have the outer here, but actually this is a subpage with the outer itself, and it can be nested deeper. If you have in this string, you need to have a unique name. It doesn't have to be unique in the whole application, but it needs to be unique in the whole flow of the page. If I now rebuild Scully, and I look at this data.json, this is a lot smaller. So this will be a lot faster on all the pages that is using it. And that's the whole idea. Just just get the data for the page, especially for the first page. Just get the data you need to get going and load everything else later on. And you can do that by using things like is Scully running? And you can say, hey, if is Scully running, I'm only going to get this part of the data. And when the full application is starting, I'm going to get the rest of it. You can do all kinds of in-between forms there, but that is most of the gist. That is one thing I wanted to show. The same goes for the outers, the outer itself. Here I have a similar thing. The outer itself is also like a big object with all kinds of things. And here I created a small function plug from. It says, okay, I'm just interested in you from the user in the name, email, website, and ID, and it plugs out that fields. If I enable this too, I save like 4K on every page that is using this data. And that quickly adds up because, as you will see, every page is being generated. So you are getting loads and loads of pages, especially if you look like in something like posts. You have, I think there are 100 in here. This isn't optimized. I should be optimizing this, but actually I'm using the data for the complete data there, so there is not much to optimize. But you're shipping this data a boatload of times, which is not a big issue to have, because if you are using your Angular application, you are shipping the same amount of data or perhaps even more. But the more data you have, the slower your page will start. And we are talking slower in a couple of milliseconds here because it's not a big difference. But if you have like 10K, it's not a problem. If you have like a megabyte of data, it's going to be noticeable. Please interrupt me if you have any questions or if you think I'm skipping something, because my carefully crafted script is completely out of the window.
Björn, maybe we can just do one or two of the list. I see some questions already around.
Yeah, there's a couple. Sure, go for it.
So one of the questions was if there is like an example on how to do pagination with data in Scully. Now you're showing like the 100 list, and of course you can do some tricks there, but how would you approach it with a Scully setup?
Well, Scully is a static site generator, so you're going to use the same trick you use for any static site generator, which is using like /page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and be a little bit smart of it. What you can do in Scully is create a small plugin that gets the number of pages that you have, just by talking to the backend and say, okay, I have like 100 results and I want pages of 10. So I have 10 pages, and then you go and generate like 10 pages. I can do a plugin if you like.
Sure, if it doesn't affect Sam's part, probably. He's
Sam
the plugin master of today, probably.
I will do a quick plugin for that. Let's say I want to do something like this. Okay, I'm thinking on my feet here. I need to register the plugin, register plugin. And this is going to be a router plugin. And I just named it paged. And I'm going to get the route and the I'm going to return something probably.
Just a quick heads up. I'm not going to do live coding, so
Yeah.
That's all right.
I'll explain more in depth what's happening here, but not by doing live coding.
So this is how you go for a page plugin. What you then do is fetch the data you want. I have the config here, so you can do get HTML.
Yeah, otherwise do some pseudo coding, probably.
Fetch. Probably fetch is working. Also, no. I have like get HTTP. Get HTTP.
Yeah, so basically the get HTTP will do the HTTP call for you, similar like the fetch API does that in the browser and that kind of stuff.
URL. And you get the results. This is not going to work.
Make a very specific remark is that you cannot do paging with get parameters using Scully. You need Scully outputs an index.html file, so you would need to output an index.html in a subfolder 1, subfolder 2, subfolder 3, for example.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Yeah, you need to do that, and it's not just Scully. That is any static site generator, because basically, if you are using a query parameter, you put in a question mark, and basically everything after the question mark gets cut off at the server, and the server cannot serve that. So you are only getting pages without anything of the search parameters. You can use search parameters in a static site, no problem, but it is for things like, okay, I'm going to do some search and there is some user input there. You should not be using it for structural things. And then array. You guys following along?
Yeah, we're still here. We're still
Absolutely.
Right.
Reading everything you do.
Route is something like the route that I got in and slash. This is obviously not exact.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. This is not how you would do it for a production thing, but it's a nice example of how you would approach it, basically.
Yeah. So basically now you do the get HTTP, give me the results, then you just use some math to get a specific subset of the pages there.
I'm just saying, okay, I have like 100 results. I want pages of 10, so I'm slash 10. I'm flooring that by math because array from a float is not going to go very well.
Yeah.
That might even have some surprising results. And then I'm using just a counter to return the route 0 to 9 in this case, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Nice. That I think that will help the person who asked the question around this.
Unfortunately, anonymous, so no shameless plug there. But are you up for another question, Sander?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. How does Scully find all that data from an external API with the transfer service? Are there limits to that?
There are no hard limits, but as I said before, you should not go with big chunks of data. You can put in 10 megabytes of data if you like to do that. I would not do that because your pages will be dog slow to load. Anything under, I would try to keep it under 40K, but anything under 200K is kind of okay, but it really depends on your application. If you have that kind of amounts of data, you should look at the techniques I just showed to pull out what you don't need.
Yeah, because I think expanding, if I understand that question correctly, expanding on that, like you were talking about getting like a certain amount of pages for Google as well, and then connecting the rest back to a server. So basically, getting into sort of a hybrid application. Is that what you would be looking for then? Get maybe like the 10 most recent or most popular results server side rendered, and do the rest like through the backend, as such or not?
If you have a highly dynamic site with highly dynamic results, you should not be using a static site generator.
All right. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. All right.
Because
yeah,
it's not fitted for that. But if you have like search pages or more or less like catalog pages that show like the first 40, and then the swap boots and it has more, that just works.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you say, okay, I generated pages. A lot of pages have infinity scrolling. Well, you cannot pre-render infinity. That will be a little bit difficult. But you can say, hey, I generate my pages during generation. I'm not going infinitive, but I'm going like 40 to 100 results.
Yeah.
I put them in the static, and once the user is there and he starts scrolling, by the time he's on the bottom,
the rest will be hydrated back in.
The thing is hydrated back in, and the rest of the results will be streaming in. So by using Scully, you have the best of both worlds, because you have static site generator. It's even so, that is something I didn't show yet, but if I go in here and I disable JavaScript, the site still works.
Yeah, exactly. That's beautiful. Because there's another question in this, in like sort of this line, and I see another one that's been voted up. I think Jeff maybe want to end on that one. But like, there's also a question on how can we use Scully to generate static sites from a Firestore database? But that sounds like a highly dynamic thing. Is that something you would recommend, or is that possible at all?
Yes, that is possible at all. I know a couple of people doing that. If you're going to use the Firestore, you have to take in account that the Firebase API is giving you observables that won't close. So they keep the result open. And you have to take that in account, because Scully is going to wait until all the results are in. And as Firebase keeps it open, it's just going to wait for until the timeout, which is 25 seconds, and then say, okay, probably there is nothing, and it will render it from there. There are some special tricks you can do, so it still renders quickly without a problem.
Okay, great. So I think we are like one or two, maybe still, Bjorn, around the questions, and then we're going to switch already.
Okay.
Oh, if that was a cue for me to grab another one, then sure.
Sorry, all waiting in anticipation on the question.
Yeah. It's hot, man. I'm tired. I forgot. Sorry. So would you recommend using Scully on like a CI pipeline to automatically build and publish new commits?
Yes.
So that's a very short and sweet answer. Yes, do that.
Yes.
That's a very good idea. Do it.
You should do it in CI. There are a couple of helpers there, because you, as you can see, if I run Scully here, it generates like 150 pages. It doesn't generate anything now because I broke something again.
Yeah, you did the plugin thing.
I did the plugin, which is not going to fly now. Leave that in. I will pump this one up a little bit again. If I'm running Scully, it is going to take page. I should have taken it out right away.
But it also gives a good view of that the messages, the error messages are pretty good if you just misconfigure Scully. So that's good that people are going to use it.
This is something you run into, and we know that it is TypeScript, so something will blow up. You will have a wrong type or anything. We just echo the errors TypeScript is giving there. You see, okay, I now have 148 pages. You might not want to generate all of them all the time, and you can say, for example, say, okay, use the route filter and do only the pages that are ending on 12. There's none ending on 1. And then you have to do the proper quotes otherwise. And now it just generates 11 pages that ends up on a 1. Authors 1, post 1, post 1, 51.
So you would say that it's possible to do deltas and stuff like that within like CI.
If you know which page is going to change, if you know, okay, no, that is post star 81 is going to change.
Yeah, I missed the final
quote.
Yeah.
It's just going to generate this one page.
Yeah, exactly. So you could do some smart things with that and just generate deltas or updates and all that. That's awesome.
So yes, that is possible. It's possible to use the route filter, which is going to use the Scully routes array, which is
we're basically talking about it already. There's a question from Baljit, who's also in the chat. Welcome. Do we have incremental builds? If not, are there any plans? Basically the same thing I was asking. So,
no, not yet. We are working on that. Incremental builds are
tricky,
to say the least.
Yeah, they are.
If not just plain impossible, because you need to build everything to see if there are changes.
Yeah. Good question, though. Well,
but we are working on some helpers and things there. We are going to make an automated service that will provide for the things like this, but that is like a little bit midterm, and all of the tech for that is still in alpha. Well, Scully is the code base of Scully is basically, it is already in beta. We are finishing up the docs like this week, and I hope we will really release the official beta right now. The code is stable, unless you are working with it like yesterday, because I broke it 4 times. But most of the days the code is really stable. We have a tremendous amount of tests in place now that will make sure that the thing that I did yesterday will not be possible again. And it was just.
What did you do yesterday, Sander?
I broke Scully severely.
Okay.
For almost everyone but me. The thing was, I optimized the 404 handling, and accidentally I was using the out folder to get the sources inside instead of the dist folder, which works apparently pretty well in my tests, but it doesn't work well if you have like anything static. Well, I have static files in there. If you have a little bit different setup, it blows up with almost anything. So it was a small fix, but it was really confusing why it was happening. It's one of those things that you are looking at and you see, this code is good, it is working. You run your test, the code is working, and you go like, what the? So that were a couple of fun hours for me.
Can imagine, yeah. Okay, I think we're all good with the questions, probably, Bjorn, and I think we're almost ready for Sam. Is there still something you want to share with our viewers, Sander?
I want to show how to add a block file, because one of the nice things of Scully is the possibility to add Markdown to your site.
Yeah.
And work with that. And I didn't show that at all just yet. What you can do is ng generate at Scully. Oh, I'm building the thing. I'm never using it. Yeah, Scully.
Shouldn't that be a ng new?
No, ng generate.
Oh, okay.
Ng generate component? No. I'm forgetting something. I need to look in the docs. The docs are way better now.
Is it the init one? Otherwise, you're missing the init. So you want probably ng generate Scully.io dash
init. Yes,
double. Yeah, and then blog.
That works way better. It created a couple of things for me. First of all, a blog folder with some content in there. And in the application, there is also a blog component. And the blog component basically just has a Scully content. The other thing it did add is in the configuration file. Still a bit struggling with the size of this thing. There is this now. I have a blog with a slug and it says type content folder. I already used that for something else too. And it has the slug, and the slug is going to be any file from this folder. Well, there is one file now. I'm sorry. So I'm going to generate I'm going to run Scully again. And now there will be some more pages. Oh. It is really going well today. Did it generate anything by any chance? Nope. Okay, to make sure that I have something to show, I create like a docs folder in which I copied the docs of Scully. And you might have seen it. It's in here. These are the markdown files in there. I really like the documentation for the ignored plugin. Okay.
It's ignored.
It's pretty ignored, yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory, yeah.
I can add something here. I can rerun Scully. And something that is reasonable new is it's updated. Ta-da!
Ta-da!
The nice thing is now that missing. The nice thing is now you have the same thing in your Angular application. I'm here in ng-serve at 4200, and it also finds all the.
So it works both ways. If you're working with a fully hydrated app as well, yeah.
Yeah, it
Oh,
now
nice.
works here. So if you want to work on the styling or anything, you can just go, okay, I'm going to the docs object. And I'm going to make some changes in the colors. section. Oh, I want a 5 pixel.
Yeah, nice visible change. Good idea.
So
yeah, beautiful.
This is
when
nice.
you're-
I know that it wasn't there and that you really need to generate it, look at the Scully part, and then visually see it. And well, it was not a pain for me, but if you're using it in a production environment with a lot of pages, then it will be, well, hard.
Well, in an
hardish.
environment, it is, after all, Scully is a deployment time tool. So you're writing the thing. The only thing is, if you're like styling your blog, which is the use case for this, in the background I have now ng-serve open. I have the Scully server running. You need to have the Scully server running, and you have to at least generate the site once, because the markdown files need to be generated, otherwise I cannot read them. And the trick is, if I'm opening up this again and I'm going to a new page, you will see that it tries to ignore all the things. It tries to read the file from localhost, but I have a special thing there. It says, hey, you're on develop time. This works only in development mode, and then it goes to read the same file from the Scully server, and it parses the details out of there and puts them into your ng-serve code, so you can quickly iterate on the styling and whatever you want to do there.
Oh, that's pretty useful.
A nice dev mode. Yeah, very cool. All right.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Sander. Yeah,
you're welcome. I hope it was not too all over the place. It felt like it, but
well, that's part of the presentation. Sometimes there's so many cool things to show, you can't focus on one part there. And we did go for a from start to static, right? That was the title. So we went through.
Yeah, we did go for start to static.
Exactly.
I will do a push of the repo. It will be available like in 10 minutes.
Well,
yes.
big hands up for Sander virtually. I know that people have been enjoying the watch. There's a couple of questions we didn't get to. We're sorry about that, but I'm sure Sander has some other venues you can try and reach. Maybe he'll give you an answer there. But next up, Jeff.
Next up is Sam. So Sam, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, then I will share your screen, and here it is. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Jeffrey. So my presentation is gonna be about custom plugins for Scully. So Sander already touched the subject. He live coded a custom plugin for example, generating different pagings, so pages for example, an overview page. I will explain a little bit more in depth about how we can generate those custom plugins. So yeah, today is going to be about custom plugins for Scully. Quickly, who am I? I'm a freelance software engineer. I'm the organizer of the Angular Belgium meetup group and the Belgian Angular conference. I recently also became a GDE for Angular. If you want to know more about me or read my blog posts, visit my website. So Scully, what's Scully exactly? Sander gave you already some details about the why and the how, but let's continue with a quick recap. If you have more questions, let them know in the chat and we will be happy to answer them. So Scully is a static site generator for Angular, and it has the potential to become a static site generator for any website or web application using any other front-end framework. Its configuration is easy. Like Sander said, the documentation is ready, so it's becoming well documented. It allows for easy automated route discovery of the two pre-rendered pages, of your application, including all static routes and the dynamic routes that get discovered by plugin configuration and by using your own custom router plugins. So this is all possible because of its plugin system, which allows us to hook into the Scully processes and do awesome stuff. So basically, the route discovery process is the essential part of Scully, because before we can pre-render our pages, we need to know exactly which pages to pre-render. So we can make a clear distinction between two types of routes. We have the static routes and we have the dynamic routes. And static routes are typically the pages that do not have a dynamic part in their URL. For example, the about page or contact page, those pages will always be that page. The URL will never change. For example, the same is true for overview pages like news or users. Their route will always be the same. So Scully can discover those routes based on the Angular routing configuration. And the routes are automatically extracted using the guest parser library, which is included in Scully. Opposed to that, we have the dynamic routes, and those routes are typically have an identifier in their path that can be used to look up the correct data in the database or from an API. And to make those pages discoverable, we need to teach Scully how to discover them. So we do this by defining the routes in the Scully config file and by building custom router plugins to feed that data to Scully. So the plugin system allows you to define and configure new ways and strategies to pre-render your pages. You can teach Scully how to generate all the dynamic URLs, for example, using the for even your most exotic routing configurations, like well, we will see later, but you can do that by using router plugins. And it is possible to extend Scully and instruct it how to process the generated output and do extra transformations, like, for example, minify HTML via render plugins. Scully is capable of handling any input source or type for the dynamic content, for example, like Sander shown, markdown files, any other text format, for example, comma-separated value files. If you want to go hardcore, even Word documents or Excel documents, if you really want to parse it. If you have a library or software that can transform it into HTML, then Scully can handle it via a file handler plugin. And those plugins I like to refer to as content plugins, as they help us with discovering the content and processing it. The other two types, the route discovery done and all done plugins, are helper plugins that we will discuss briefly at the end. Let's take a deeper look into the different plugins. So router plugins are used to instruct Scully how to handle the dynamic router parameters, and that for a specific router configuration. They can be used to fetch that data that you can use to expand those router parameters and generate the full list of possible URLs for the route configuration. So typical examples are a blog or a news detail page or a user detail page. If you see these examples, you can probably think of your own specific router configuration that relates to this kind of setup. If you take a look at a basic example of a router plugin, for example, for the dynamic routes /users/ID, the full list for this route can be generated using the Scully built-in route types.json router plugin. And in this case, the dynamic property ID from /users/ID will be expanded using the data returned by a JSON source and a specified value from those objects in the data source. In this case, we mentioned property ID, which means that Scully should get the value for the ID from the ID key value pair in the data. And the only thing that we need to do for that is to configure the route in our Scully config file. And this will return the full list of all users that are available via their own dynamic URL. If we have a more exotic or more complex route, like for example /news/ID/slug, we can define our own custom router plugin to handle this. Let's take a brief look into how we can define such a plugin. Well, a plugin is in essence just a function that takes the route declaration and its configuration. We fetch the required data that we will use to create the list of routes. And for that, we can use the Scully built-in HTTP get JSON function for retrieving the data.
That's how I called it.
Yes, indeed. I think you used get JSON, but okay, the idea is valid. Yeah. So then we can use the convenience method route split of Scully which will give back a helper method, createPath, that we can use with the data to format all the routes. And finally, the function returns the list of routes that we discovered. Before we can use this custom plugin, we need to register with Scully, and we do that by using the register plugin method and by defining the type of the plugin. In this case, it's a router plugin, its identifier, and the plugin function. We export this identifier for reference and to use it in the Scully config. Then the last step is configuring the plugin, and all we need to do there is we need to import it. So we import the news constant or the reference that we exported from the plugin file. And by importing this constant, we will also execute the code in the plugin, and the plugin will get registered. Next, we associate the news plugin with the configured dynamic route /news/id/slug. As we saw from the implementation of the plugin, the only configuration our plugin needs is the URL or the data source to retrieve the news data from. So now our custom router plugin is configured and usable, and we will see it in action in the demo at the end of the presentation. So the next important type of plugin is the render plugin, and we can use this plugin, this kind of plugins to execute additional post-rendering processes. In more clear language, this means that we can transform the HTML output that comes from pre-rendering our pages. So, for example, we can inject additional third-party scripts like Hotjar or Google Analytics, or even a specific per-page configuration for those scripts. We can minify HTML, which will optimize our page even more, or we can create extra dynamic content, which is based on the original content to enhance our pages, like, for example, generating a table of contents on the page. Let's create a custom render plugin. So as said before, this will allow us to execute our own post-processing logic on the HTML output. In this case, this example render plugin will just add a simple banner to all the pages that are generated. So first, we define a function, which takes the by Scully generated HTML and simply adds a paragraph to the top of the page. I'm not saying this is the ideal way to do such a thing, but it works. We register the plugin with the correct type. In this case, it's the render plugin type. We use an identifier, and we mention the render function itself. We export the identifier to make it available in the Scully config file, just as we did with the custom router plugin. So configuring the render plugin is similar to configuring a router plugin. We first import the identifier, which will also execute the register plugin in the plugin file. And next, we configure the demo banner identifier as a default post-renderer function. This means that it will execute for all the discovered routes that Scully discovered during the discovery process. This simple plugin requires no extra configuration, so the custom render plugin is set up and usable. We will see it as well in action in the demo at the end of this presentation. Forgot to click. So the third notable plugin type is the file handler plugin. These kinds of plugins are used by the internal Scully content folder plugin, and they define how to read those specific files like comma-separated value files and transform them into HTML. There are two built-in, if I'm not mistaken, file handler plugins for handling Markdown and ASCII code files. And if you have any other type of logic, like I said before, if you have a library, if you find a library on NPM that can handle any kind of content, you can install it via NPM or Yarn, and then Scully will be able to use that to transform the contents to HTML. So you can easily define your own. So the homepage of Scully, it's a perfect example. Sander also showed that in his demo. It's the perfect example of how to generate a static Angular website using Scully and Markdown files. So on the left, you can see the output, and on the right, you can see the original Markdown files on GitHub. There are 2 other plugins available. I haven't used them myself yet, but they can have some potential for your own specific project. The first one is the Route Discovery Done plugin. And these kind of plugins are executed after all the routes have been collected and all the router plugins have been handled. So every plugin of this type receives a shallow copy of the array containing all the route handles that were collected during the discovery process. Plugins of this type can typically be used to calculate statistics, generate sitemaps, or, for example, update an RSS feed, and any other thing that you can come up with. The second one is the All Done plugin, and these type of plugins are called when all Scully processes and plugins have finished. A plugin of this type can be used to do some final processing, perhaps cleaning up some temporary files, stuff like that. Everything that should happen at the end. So, community plugins, well, the power of Scully lies in fact within its plugin system. So it will be the community that can make the tool grow a lot. Like, for example, a growing set of community plugins is already available, and you can find and list yours at the recommended plugins page on the Scully website. If you just do a pull request on GitHub, Sander will take a look at it, and he will confirm if it's in a good styling, stuff like that, and then he will be happy to merge it for you. So if you create a plugin, it's advisable to use the Scully-plugin- prefix for naming your plugin. Why? This will make it easy discoverable, and it will help creating a uniform naming of Scully plugins. So the following selection, I have to make myself clear, it's only a selection. There might be others out there. These are the ones that I know so far. So the following selection is already available, and their naming should be enough to understand kind of what they are doing. But you might see something weird there, the disable Angular plugin. That might seem a bit weird. How could we disable Angular, and what is the purpose of that? Well, we will try out the first 2 of them in the demo, which is the Minify HTML and the disable Angular render plugins. So enough with the high-level talking. All this theory is fine, but let's show a real code example in action. I will not show the basic setup of Scully, but I will start from an existing application and a very basic existing configuration. Okay.
You know what they say, talk is cheap, show me the code.
Yep. So here's code. You see my code? Font size good?
Yeah, all looks good for me.
Cool. So I already have the application running. To first show it, let me quickly open up localhost 4200. Yeah, sorry if my computer reacts slow. It's being influenced by the heat. It's like a UFO taking off. It's like constantly blowing. So goal of this playground. Well, this is just a very basic example of an Angular application. It has a home route. It has a news overview page, which lists the 100 news detail pages. If you click on a news detail page, you will go to the detail page. It will show and load the data for the news detail. Same for the user. It's a list of users and the detail page of the user with the articles that this user has written. To show this in the code, so apps, Scully source app. It's a very simple application, so just you can ignore the groups. It's a news module and a user module, which are both lazy loaded modules. And they load the data, perhaps not in the best way, but in a way that works. So don't judge the code, because I'm doing like a check here, is Scully generated, but there's like a utility function for that Sander showed using the transfer state service. which does basically the same, but it wraps it and does it for you. So this is the example application. So what happens if I show the code for this? If I show the page source of this application, you will just see nothing. This is the typical index.html page that you see while developing an Angular application. But the power of Scully is that it generates this for you statically upfront at deploy or at build time. So let's do that. Let's see the basic Scully config for it. So perhaps a very good detail that I should show is, wrong page, this one. So the users as a /1/Sam Vloeberghs, which is an ID and a slug, and the news just as an ID. So /1, /2. Back to the Scully configuration file. So to make those routes discoverable for Scully, we need to define them and configure them in the Scully config file. We do that here for news/ID, and we do that for /user/ID/slug. Both route configurations have their own custom plugin, the news plugin and the users plugin. If we go check the users plugin, we will see that this is typically what happened in the presentation. We get the list of data from the config URL. We use the utility function route split to get back another utility function, create path, and we use that create path function with the dynamic data to build up a list of to-handle routes, and we return the list of to-handle routes. We do the same for news, but for news, we could have used the route type.json plugin, but because our data is not configured in a way that it allows to use the route types.json plugin, we had to write our own plugin. And to show that, I will show how the news looks. Just a very dummy file, just a list of 100 numbers that we load in. And because this is not an object, yes, Sander?
We now have like a function that can do the transformation for you, that gets the raw data and returns like formatted data that you then can pull. So you don't need to write a plugin for all of those things, because that is something that comes so often. We did a provision for that, but the rest, it's a good example.
Okay. So just for the sake of the example, this is how we implement a custom router plugin. So if we would now run Scully with this configuration, we do npm run Scully scan routes to make sure we get all the latest routes with the config file, Scully 2. Yeah, there it is. Autocomplete is slow. Let's run it.
I think your Mac is being heavily thermal throttled, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Been experiencing that today as well. Yeah, it's horrible.
And I even lifted it up, like it's floating on a stand, and still
it's too hot for the little machines. Can't handle it.
So for this specific example, I need to keep the normal Angular application running, because I'm using the localhost port 4200 to access the files. So your Scully needs to be able to load this data while it's generating the list of routes. And now it's really, really slow. But it's not slow because of Scully, yeah? Just to be sure, to be clear, it's slow because of my machine, which is slow at the moment.
Definitely the Mac. It's not Scully. It's the Mac. Only today. Yeah. No, it's annoying. It's difficult. So could you perhaps, as we wait for your compiler to catch up, talk through what it's doing now in the background? How it's already moving now?
Yeah, so Scully, well, it parses the configuration, and it sees that there's a configuration for /user/id/slug. So Scully runs this custom user router plugin. It builds up all the list of routes for /user/id/slug, and then feeds that list of routes to Scully, which will visit all the pages in Puppeteer, take a snapshot of a static version of the current state of the website, and serialize it to a static HTML file. That's what it does in like 2 sentences. It does a lot more, but yeah, that's the idea. So as we can see now, Scully is visiting and rendering the different news pages, which are like 100. And for the user, it will only be like 10 pages. Almost there. Yeah.
So applause for the Mac.
Yeah, so it says that rendering the pages took 56.4 seconds. It seemed to be like a lot more, but I think that's quite nice. 60 seconds to render, what was it, around how many pages? 130 pages. So that's good. So the output is now in this Scully static. And yeah, it's still re-indexing probably. But as you can see, the news is already there. And probably users will follow as well.
Or something went wrong, perhaps.
No, because yeah, it's just my machine, which is very slow.
Yeah,
as you can see here, it output users 9. If I would take a look in terminal in Finder.
Sam, maybe a quick suggestion: if it really becomes unmanageable, turning off the video camera offloads a lot from the CPU, and that cools it down a bit.
So I'll shut down my camera.
Yeah, if you shut down your webcam, you just turn the stop webcam or stop cam on StreamYard. It helped me at least this afternoon. Yeah.
Okay.
So there it is.
As you can see, yeah, the user is there. Nice. So now to show that this has rendered, I just created like a very simple, there are other ways, but I created a script that will serve this for us. This. And then it will run on port 4203. Host 4203. Oh, it's working. So what you saw here was this was a client-side navigation, so that's why it was a little bit slow. But if you would like completely refresh the page, you will see that it's instant. We can show that it is pre-rendered by showing source code, which is completely there. So this works pretty fine. So this was the first example of creating a custom news plugin, custom router plugin, sorry. We continue with the next example, which is the custom renderer plugin. I need to take Scully 3. So this is the same example as I shown in the presentation. It's a demo banner plugin, which will just simply add a banner message to the top of the application. So this plugin has been configured to allow configuration, which I will show in the next part of the demo. So to show this and to make it a little bit quicker, I will disable I will remove the news, which is around 100 pages, and I will only render the users. So this was the, well, this will not work anymore because the page is not running anymore. Let's go back to the code. Let's wait a bit. So what happens here is, first, like before, the user router plugin gets executed. We list all the routes of the users. Scully visits all those pages in Puppeteer, takes a static snapshot of the HTML, returns that HTML, and our demo banner plugin will take that HTML as input and do some extra parsing on the HTML. In this case, it will look for the app root and replace it with code that also has the banner in it. So normally when our pre-rendering is done here, we should see the same page as we saw before, but with a banner on top. Yeah, so run, serving. So if we refresh now, we will see that each of those pages has now a banner on top saying when it was pre-rendered. Okay, so this was a render plugin. To show one more example, perhaps two more examples, is, oh, there's an old example. Let's make that meetup. Voila. So plugins can be configured, of course. So we can use the set plugin config function from Scully. We give it the name or the identifier of the plugin, and then we pass it an object that can basically be everything. As long as the plugin knows how to handle it, it will handle it. So if you go back to the demo banner plugin, the demo banner plugin will check if there's a configuration. If there's a message on the configuration, it will use that message inside the banner instead of the default message. So we have that now. I will do the same for here. I will remove the news to make it a little bit faster. We render again. Oh, no, wrong. Fast. Config 4. So exactly the same thing happening here. It's just some extra logic in the demo banner that gets executed.
Your machine is having a hard time today.
Yeah, I hope it's not going to burn.
Cold bath for him afterwards. Oh wait, maybe don't do that.
I've been using my MacBook Pro for everything, and I'm really... Oh, there's an error. Could not connect to server. What's wrong here? Let's see. That's probably a temporary thing. Let's try again.
Let's call it the demo gods again.
Yeah. I've really been considering you. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to make a joke. Continue your presentations, but it matters now. So.
Okay.
While it is working, I might say, Scully is using all the cores in the computer to speed up the process as much as possible. It automatically detects the number of cores available and will use that amount of puppeteers simultaneously. It is a kind of a stretch for the computer. It will run. If you have a fast computer there, it's not that bad. As you could see by I'm generating like 150 routes in
mere seconds,
like
yeah.
7 seconds, 8 seconds. If you throw enough compute power and RAM to it, it will go fast. And that's about it. Most notebooks are not really suited for this kind of workload because it is a really intensive workload.
Especially now on the hot days, yeah.
Yeah, an Airco or an iSpec will help.
Yep. But it's not only Scully that's straining right now. It's like my laptop's been screaming at me all day. Yeah, continue, Sam.
So now we can see at the top that the configuration for the demo banner plugin was used to highlight this message. There's one example left, but I'm not 100% sure. Ah, yeah, it was the minify HTML and the disable Angular. So this last example is actually a combination of different things. I mentioned that we specify the render plugin in the default post renderers configuration setting of Scully. This will execute all those render plugins for every file, for every route it discovered. But if we define the post renderers on a route configuration level, only the renderer plugins that are defined here will be executed for that specific route. So it's not like an extension of the default post renderers. It's really a replacement for the specific route. So in this case, the demo banner and the minify HTML render plugin will be executed for all pages. But the demo banner, disable Angular, and minify HTML plugin will be executed for the users and only for the users' routes. So if I run this configuration file, perhaps I should keep the news here for a better example. So still same thing happening here. First, all the routes get discovered. After all the routes get discovered, Scully visits all the routes, takes the static version of the page rendered in Puppeteer, and applies the post renderers that were set up on that HTML before outputting the index.html on the file system. And this is a very big difference with how currently Angular Universal is working. Scully, in fact, gives a better approach in handling extra transformations on the HTML. Currently, it's hard to plug into the Angular Universal default setup. For example, for minifying the HTML, because in Universal, you will have to read the output on the file system again, transfer the HTML, and write it again. With Scully, you can transform the HTML before it gets output to the file system. And that's a big key difference in speed. Just as an intermezzo. Okay, so the routes have been fetched. And Scully now starts visiting the pages. Okay.
Almost there.
So, yeah, you can see what Sander said about the different instances from Puppeteer. As you can see here, the progress is not linear. It just shows you what at that point was rendered. So if one instance of Scully is faster than the other one, the pre-rendering might not be in the order that you expect it to be. Voila, we're done. We're serving it again. And just to come back on what happened here is the disable Angular thing. What is this? We are disabling Angular. What does that mean? Well, we are not completely disabling Angular because the pages are still loaded in Scully, so in Puppeteer with Angular, because we need to be able to get the full page, which was built with Angular, before we can statically take a static copy of it. But as soon as we have a static version of the page, there might be use cases where you don't really need to bootstrap Angular anymore in the application. And this can even be done on a specific page base. For example, only disable Angular on the users page. And I will show that now. So if we go to the root of the application, and we open up developer tools to show some more details. Yeah, slow. It's coming.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, there it is. Almost there, almost there. Need a little bit more space. I think the font size of the developer tools is good, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
Fantastic, even. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so we're now at the root of the page, which was just rendered with the renderer plugin demo banner and minify HTML, and we can see that the content is even more minified as before. So now the HTML is minified, and we have the banner, obviously. If we now navigate, we're just using an Angular application. So we're using client-side navigation to navigate through the Angular application. The news plugin had no specific post renderer, so there was no disable Angular. So if we refresh a news page, we're just, again, bootstrapping an Angular application. So as we now navigate, we navigate through the page using client-side navigation. But if we go to the users page, and this is a very specific nuance. We navigated from news to users, so now we're still in an Angular application. But if I now refresh the user page, but more specifically a user detail page, there's no Angular. This is just basically the example that Sandra has shown by disabling JavaScript. It's kind of the same thing. JavaScript is still enabled, but there's no Angular at all. And we can show that by going back to news. Let's go back to news. Bear with me, it will become clear. So if we're now at news, and we're at this is again an Angular application. If we do a navigation, we will see that, come on, this is so slow. That this is an XHR, so this might be confusing because it's an index.html, but this was requested via Ajax, so this is still an Angular application. I might not have the best example here. Sander, you know what this is? This is the inline state only example where we don't load the data.json, but we load it from the page itself. I will go back to users. And if I navigate now, this one, I need a detail page. So now I'm on a page that has no Angular, and I can show you that if I click now on news, it will not do a client-side navigation, but it will send a navigation request to the server, as you can see here.
Yeah, so that's when it bootstraps an Angular app then at that moment.
Yeah. Indeed. So it goes. It does a server-side navigate. It does a server navigation request to news, which is again an Angular application. But users itself, if we load users from the beginning, It's just a normal, very basic HTML application. Not sure if we can inspect that, but yeah, you can see that like the typical comments that Angular outputs in the elements are not there. So this is just using href to make a navigation. If we load news, you can see those typical outputs. Now news. The best example is that it loads, actually. It loads the Angular bundles, and on the users page, it does not. On the users detail page, sorry.
Yeah, I think you've shown it.
Yeah, it only loads the
exactly.
styles.
It has no sign right now in your network that it's creating or requesting things from the server that a regular Angular app would do.
Yeah, indeed. So that concludes the demo. Let me go back to the presentation. Bear with me. Present.
Of course, we want your face scan with that as well.
Yes, coming back soon. Yes, here I am.
Hey.
All sweaty, but still alive. Okay. So, to conclude, my notes. Here are my notes. Okay. Oh. Let's go back. Okay. Yes, I think we're all good now for continuing the presentation. So, conclusion. Well, Scully is a great tool, but it's still evolving. As Sander has already mentioned, moving to the beta, getting the documentation ready, and well, anyway, we can already start using it. It's still kind of in developer preview, but it's definitely ready to use. A big part of its flexibility is the plugin system, as I have shown that. I've shown very basic examples of how to create a router and news and a render plugin, sorry. But yeah, anything is possible. You only need to analyze your own use case. So the plugin system, it allows you to have custom ways of discovering your own dynamic URLs. You can do post-rendering and transformations of the HTML. And you are able to handle different content file types like pure text files, comma-separated value files, Markdown, ASCII code, whatever you can think about. And there are additional plugin types like the all done plugin type that you can use to do post-processing to clean up stuff or do additional work. There are already several community plugins available. So check out the recommended plugins page on the Scully website and make use of them. And if you have your own, please share it. If you want to read more, there's the official documentation on the Scully website, on the GitHub. I have everything that I've talked about in here, I've written out in blog articles that you can find on my website. Also some more information about Scully versus Universal and what you should choose for your project, and comparing some benchmarks. Thank you for your attention. I hope there are questions. I'm very eager to answer them.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was good, even though your laptop's really giving you a hard time. I hope that comment you made about share your plugin was aimed at Jeffrey, right?
Yes,
sure. Yeah, sure. Okay, upcoming week. All
right. I've one question here from Anonymous, unfortunately. It's referring to the disable Angular plugin that you showed there. It's a little difficult to get the point across, but I think the question here is, wouldn't you want to have to disable Angular on completely static blocks? And I think there might be something missing, like for the whole configuration instead of for just a singular or for a few of these routes. Is that something that's possible right now? Perhaps Sander,
I can show it.
Oh.
If you share my screen,
here it is.
There we go.
There is here like a complete Angular application, which happens to be our
documentation.
And which has a list of existing plugins. We have already quite a few. As you can see, there is no JavaScript being loaded at all.
So Scully team is using the...
Yeah, the Scully team is... Thank you, Sam. That saved me from writing the thing myself. The big uptick from this thing, why would you do this, is basically performance. Let me grab Lighthouse, do some testing. Lighthouse is terribly slow, as you all know. Oh, wait.
Great performance, Sander.
This is the reason why you want to do a website without any JavaScript. Basically, you don't need it for a boatload of things. You need JavaScript for some things, but not for everything. And if you don't need it, we are going to create some animations in this site and a lot of other things that look like they are using JavaScript there, but they are just using what the standards offered, like CSS, HTML, the stuff of that. We are working on an overhaul, and it's going to look really, really nice. The uptick is basically there is 58 kilobyte of resources here, including everything.
Yeah, that's all the data and imagery and all the things you're using. So that's really powerful. Yeah.
So it's under 100K for every page. A lot of it is even shared between pages. We are going to hook this up with a service worker so that the service worker will preload all the pages in the cache, which is not a big deal because the pages are only like a few kilobytes. And that will make like the score even better than it is now. Although better than 100 is kind of impossible, but we can slightly improve a little bit on the accessibility. Yeah.
But it is a game changer though, because Angular turns from a front-end development tool into more of a build tool to create your website. So you develop your tool, your website in Angular, but the output is no Angular at all. It's just a static site using pure HTML and CSS. So I'm not saying that this is good for all approaches, because a very big Angular application will need its Angular code.
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot do without it. But for example, a static blog or your own personal website,
just landing pages, can
easily be built with Angular, but without shipping the Angular to the front end.
Or only shipping the Angular when it's required. So when you get into the more, dynamic parts of the application, or user interaction or whatever, then the Angular can fire. But all the rest can be statically generated. That's beautiful, yeah. There's one more question here for you, Sam, but perhaps Sander also has a similar opinion, and maybe even Jeffrey if we want. What plugins are you looking forward to / most interested in right now? And I'm guessing that's referring to Scully plugins. So Sander might have the inside scoop. So Sam first, perhaps?
So you mean like internal plugins or like
or just general community plugins that you've seen people talking about on Twitter? Just shout them out freely. Yeah,
well, there is this. I'm not sure if it's like a general term, but it's like the paperclip experiment that like waits a few seconds before bootstrapping Angular to make the performance of the application faster. So basically, that is just postponing the loading of Angular for a few seconds, so that the perception of the speed is much higher, or the performance of the application is much higher. But this is a more in-depth concept. I think it's called rehydration of the website or application, which is still a very, very, very difficult topic, a very difficult technique to apply at a good level for applications. And for me personally, the plugins that I already know, the Minify HTML plugin, it's very simple, but it's very, very useful, because it does not only remove code that is totally useless, it really makes your pages smaller in size. So any kilobyte that you can pinch off is good. Always remember that.
Absolutely.
And then table of the things are the already existing plugins are really good additions from the community.
Sander?
I would love to see a good Firebase plugin. There are a couple of them floating around, but there is none. None of them are officially published on the Scully side. There are some challenges there, and you need to do manual idle ready, and that's perhaps why people shy away from it. But it's actually not that hard. I would love to see a good plugin for that, and more plugins are coming. I can do a little tip of the in a not too far away future, we are going to support other renderers aside from Puppeteer, which means that, for example, we can do image processing. Or even include Angular Universal as a renderer.
Cool.
Very nice.
We are testing things with that, and everything is looking very well, but it's way too unstable to ship anything yet.
Yeah. Work in progress. Yeah.
It's a work in progress, but we are getting there. It's something like I expect to ship that in like 3 to 6 months.
All right.
And I'm currently busy with deployment server. So you have like Scully already has a server. You don't have to use like HTTP server or anything else. If you do like npm run Scully serve, you have like a small server that is a dev server for Scully that has a couple of extras in there. For example, if you try to render a page that's not there, it usually will wait for 25 seconds for a timeout if you use another server. If you use the Scully server, it says, hey, this page is not there, and it just it just stops and goes ahead. You can even it logs out on the console, hey, this page was not there, we skipped it. You can even there is a setting so you can stop. So if you have something like that in your CE pipeline, you can give it a full stop because you don't want to proceed if things are missing.
Yeah, so, build thread now, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple of more settings like that. So Scully terminates in case of any errors. Usually we are very lenient and we are basically swallowing all errors and just go ahead and pump out whatever we can pump out. And what we cannot pump out, we say, hey, we skipped this because we didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But we are working with a couple of big clients and they say, yeah, this is all hunky-dory, but we want a full stop and an error. So
fair. Yeah, sure, fair point. Yeah,
and that is very useful, and that is also an addition we did lately. One of the other things that I came to think about is I completely forgot. I don't
That's
know.
all right.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Any questions?
Yeah. If you have if one favorite plugin comes to mind, then feel free. Jeffrey, do you have a favorite plugin right now out there floating around? Is it still on your computer somewhere, perhaps?
No, the plugin Sam and Sander already mentioned. It's on my GitHub, basically on my public GitHub, so people can already have a look at it. Probably I will publish it. Soonish then, so that everybody can use it. It's basically just a RSS feed plugin where you can just generate your RSS feed based on the route. And I think I don't know exactly what the latest code base is actually, but I think it's using the all done part or the route discovery done part. So because then everything is ready for the specific route, and I know for sure that the RSS feed is correct. And I do some things with the date and sorting the dates so that the most recent one is on top and that kind of stuff. But I will publish it soon-ish.
Well, I don't really have a favorite plugin, but I want to use this opportunity to give a quick shout out. Somebody in chat, a a friend of ours, Michiel, says he has if you use global styling, he has a very simple plugin to remove all Angular-specific attributes on the static source. Saved him about 10 kilobytes on the homepage. So maybe that's something that we can put on that list. Michiel, definitely get in touch with one of these people underneath me here.
Yeah, very nice. The first thing that I think about when seeing this comment, I think you can like use the default view encapsulation of none in Angular, and then it will not even generate the ng content things.
That's on Ivy then. Yeah, that might be. Yeah.
Yeah, I found out if you use like Scully styling with empty braces and put nothing in there, it doesn't output the ng content either.
Well, there we go.
Wow.
Which was like a bug because I never anticipated that, and Scully broke on that.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
It's fixed by now, but it was like we had this really, really strange error or something over there, and it turned out to be the missing ng content.
Nice.
So that one is fixed. I still found like a follow-up of that today, and I'm going to fix that tomorrow, which is that if you have no ng content, the Scully content component will also get a little bit confused and replace everything with not found.
Sure thing. Well, Michiel says he'll check it out, so yeah. All right, that's all the questions we have. Jeffrey, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you guys for being on our show. It was a great talk. I really love the things you do around Scully and the other things you do, of course. I want to share with our viewers that we're going to skip the upcoming month for our meetup. We're not doing anything because of the summer and the heat. Probably all machines will die around then. So probably expect something in August. Maybe we're even can hug each other again. We'll see. Otherwise, we're again online and on the same channel. So like, subscribe, and thank you for watching, everybody.
Thank you so much. See you next time.
See you.